Christmas Island, officially the territory of Christmas Island, is an external territory of the Commonwealth of Australia located in Christmas Island, comprising the island of the same name. It has a population of 2,072 residents who live mainly in settlements on the northern tip of the island, including Flying Fish Cove, Silver City, Poon Saan, and Drumsite. Around two-thirds of the island's population are Malaysian Chinese, with significant numbers of Malays and European Australians as well as smaller numbers of Malaysian Indians and Eurasians. Several languages are in use, including English, Malay, and various Chinese dialects, while Buddhism is the primary religion, followed by three-quarters of the population. The island was discovered on Christmas Day 1643, but only settled in the late 19th century. Its geographic isolation and history of minimal human disturbance has led to a high level of endemism among its flora and fauna, which is of interest to scientists and naturalists. 63% of its 135 square kilometers is an Australian national park. There exist large areas of primary monsoonal forest. Phosphate, deposited originally as guano, has been mined on the island for many years. Geography. Located at 10.500 degrees south, 105.667 degrees east, minus 10.500, 105.667, the island is about 19 kilometers in greatest length and 14.5 kilometers in breadth. The total land area is 135 square kilometers, with 138.9 kilometers of coastline. The island is the flat summit of an underwater mountain more than 4,500 meters high, which rises from about 4,200 meters below the sea in only about 300 meters above it. The mountain was originally a volcano, and some basalt is exposed in places such as the Dales and Dolly Beach, but most of the surface rock is limestone accumulated from coral growth. The karst terrain supports numerous ankylene caves. The summit of this mountain peak is formed by a succession of tertiary limestones ranging from the Eocene up to recent reef deposits, with intercalations of volcanic rock in the older beds. Steep cliffs along much of the coast rise abruptly to a central plateau. Elevation ranges from sea level to 361 meters at Murray Hill. The island is mainly tropical rainforest, 63% of which is national park land. The narrow fringing reef surrounding the island can be a maritime hazard. Christmas Island lies 2,600 kilometers northwest of Perth, Western Australia, 500 kilometers south of Indonesia, 975 kilometers east of the Cocos Islands, and 2,748 kilometers west of Darwin, Northern Territory. Its closest point to the Australian mainland is 1,560 kilometers from the town of Exmouth, Western Australia. Beaches. Christmas Island has 80 kilometers of shoreline, but only small parts of the shoreline are easily accessible. The island's perimeter is embodied by sharp cliff faces, making many of the island's beaches difficult to get to. Some of the easily accessible beaches include Flying Fish Cove, Lily Beach, Ethel Beach, and Isabel Beach, while the more difficult beaches to access include Greta Beach, Dolly Beach, Winifred Beach, Merrill Beach, and West White Beach, which all require a vehicle with four-wheel drive and a difficult walk through dense rainforest to access. Climate. As Christmas Island is located toward the southern edge of the equatorial region, climate is tropical and temperatures vary little throughout the months. The highest temperature is usually around 29 degrees Celsius in March and April, while the lowest temperature is 23 degrees Celsius and occurs in August. There is a dry season from July to November with only occasional showers. The wet season is between November and May, and includes monsoons, which are downpours of rain at random times of the day. Tropical cyclones may also occur in the wet season, bringing very solid winds, rain and enormous seas. These tropical cyclones only happen occasionally. For most of the time during the wet season is damp, subside weather. History. Captain William Miners of the Royal Mary, an English East India Company vessel, named the island when he sailed past it on Christmas Day, in 1643. The island was included on English and Dutch navigation charts as early as the beginning of the 17th century, but it was not until 1666 that a map published by Dutch cartographer Peter Goos included the island. Goos labeled the island Moni, or Moni, the meaning of which is unclear. English navigator William Dampier, aboard the English ship Signet, made the earliest recorded visit to the sea around the island in March 1688. He found it uninhabited. Dampier gave an account of the visit which can be found in his Voyages. Dampier was trying to reach Cocos from New Holland. His ship was pulled off course in an easterly direction, arriving at Christmas Island 28 days later. Dampier landed at the Dales. Two of his crewmen became the first Europeans to set foot on Christmas Island. Daniel Beekman made the next recorded visit, chronicled in his 1718 book, A Voyage to and from the Island of Borneo in the East Indies. Exploration and annexation. The first attempt at exploring the island was in 1857 by the crew of the Amethyst. They tried to reach the summit of the island, but found the cliffs impassable. During the 1872–76 Challenger expedition to Indonesia, naturalist John Murray carried out extensive surveys. In 1886, Captain John McClure of HMS Flying Fish, having discovered an anchorage in a bay that he named Flying Fish Cove, landed a party and made a small collection of the flora and fauna. In the next year, Pelham Aldrich, on board HMS Egeria, visited it for 10 days, accompanied by J. Lister, who gathered a larger biological and mineralogical collection. Among the rocks then obtained and submitted to Murray for examination were many of nearly pure phosphate of lime. This discovery led to annexation of the island by the British Crown on 6 June 1888. Settlement and exploitation. Soon afterwards, a small settlement was established in Flying Fish Cove by G. Clunies Ross, the owner of the Cocos Islands to the southwest, to collect timber and supplies for the growing industry on Cocos. Phosphate mining began in the 1890s using indentured workers from Singapore, Malaya and China. John Davis Murray, a mechanical engineer and recent graduate of Purdue University, was sent to supervise the operation on behalf of the Phosphate Mining and Shipping Company. Murray was known as the King of Christmas Island until 1910, when he married and settled in London. The island was administered jointly by the British Phosphate Commissioners and district offices from the United Kingdom Colonial Office through the Straits Settlements, and later the Crown Colony of Singapore. Hunt provides a detailed history of Chinese indentured labor on the island during those years. In 1922, scientists attempted unsuccessfully to view a solar eclipse from the island to test Einstein's theory of relativity. Christmas Island produces the 199th most exports in the world, as of 2014. The country's top exports include phosphatic fertilizers, calcium phosphate, and computers. Their top imports include refined petroleum, cars, and air conditioners. Japanese invasion. From the outbreak of the Southeast Asian theater of World War II in December 1941, Christmas Island was a target for Japanese occupation because of its rich phosphate deposits. A naval gun was installed under a British officer and 4 NCOs and 27 Indian soldiers. The first attack was carried out on the 20th of January 1942 by the Japanese submarine I-59, which torpedoed a Norwegian freighter, the Eidsvoll. The vessel drifted and eventually sank off West White Beach. Most of the European and Asian staff and the families were evacuated to Perth. In late February and early March 1942, there were 2 aerial bombing raids. Shelling from a Japanese naval group on the 7th of March led the district officer to hoist the white flag. But after the Japanese naval group sailed away, the British officer raised the Union flag once more. During the night of 10-11 March, a mutiny of the Indian troops, abetted by Sikh policemen, led to the killing of the 5 British soldiers and the imprisonment of the remaining 21 Europeans. At dawn on the 31st of March 1942, a dozen Japanese bombers launched the attack, destroying the radio station. The same day, a Japanese fleet of 9 vessels arrived, and the island was surrendered. About 850 men of the 21st and 24th Special Base Forces and 102nd Construction Unit came ashore at Flying Fish Cove and occupied the island. They rounded up the workforce, most of whom had fled to the jungle. Sabotaged equipment was repaired and preparations were made to resume the mining and export of phosphate. Only 20 men from the 21st Special Base Force were left as a garrison. Isolated acts of sabotage and the torpedoing of the Nisei Maru at the wharf on the 17th of November 1942 meant that only small amounts of phosphate were exported to Japan during the occupation. In November 1943, over 60% of the island's population was evacuated to Sarabayan prison camps, leaving a total population of just under 500 Chinese and Malays and 15 Japanese to survive as best they could. In October 1945, HMS Rother reoccupied Christmas Island. After the war, 7 mutineers were traced and prosecuted by the military court in Singapore. In 1947, 5 of them were sentenced to death. However, following representations made by the newly independent government of India, the sentences were reduced to penal servitude for life. Transfer to Australia. At Australia's request, the United Kingdom transferred sovereignty to Australia, with a $20 million payment from the Australian government to Singapore as compensation for the loss of earnings from the phosphate revenue. The United Kingdom's Christmas Island Act was given royal assent on the 14th of May 1958, enabling Britain to transfer authority over Christmas Island from Singapore to Australia by an order in council. Australia's Christmas Island Act was passed in September 1958 and the island was officially placed under the authority of the Commonwealth of Australia on the 1st of October 1958. Under Commonwealth Cabinet Decision 1573 of 9 September 1958, D.E. Nichols was appointed the first official representative of the new territory. In a media statement on 5 August 1960, the Minister for Territories Paul Hasluck said, among other things, that his extensive knowledge of the Malay language and the customs of the Asian people has proved invaluable in the inauguration of Australian administration. During his 2 years on the island he had faced unavoidable difficulties, and constantly sought to advance the island's interests. John William Stokes succeeded him and served from 1 October 1960 to 12 June 1966. On his departure he was lauded by all sectors of the island community. In 1968, the official secretary was retitled an administrator and, since 1997, Christmas Island and the Cocos Islands together are called the Australian Indian Ocean Territories and share a single administrator resident on Christmas Island. Recollections of the island's history and lifestyle, and lists and timetables of the island's leaders and events since its settlement are at the World Statesman site and in Neil, Bosman, Hunt and Stokes. The settlement of Silver City was built in the 1970s, with aluminium-clad houses that were supposed to be cyclone-proof. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami centered off the western shore of Sumatra in Indonesia resulted in no reported casualties, but some swimmers were swept some 150 meters out to sea for a time before being swept back in. Refugee and immigration detention. For the late 1980s and early 1990s, boats carrying asylum seekers, mainly departing from Indonesia, began landing on the island. In 2001, Christmas Island was the site of the Tampa controversy, in which the Australian government stopped a Norwegian ship, MV Tampa, from disembarking 438 rescued asylum seekers. The ensuing standoff and the associated political reactions in Australia were a major issue in the 2001 Australian federal election. The Howe government operated the Pacific Solution from 2001 to 2007, excising Christmas Island from Australia's migration zone so that asylum seekers on the island could not apply for refugee status. Asylum seekers were relocated from Christmas Island to Manus Island and Nauru. In 2006, an immigration detention centre, containing approximately 800 beds, was constructed on the island for the Department of Immigration and Multicultural Affairs. Originally estimated to cost $276 million, the final cost was over $400 million. In 2007, the Rudd government announced plans to decommission Manus Island Regional Processing Centre and Nauru Detention Centre. Processing would then occur on Christmas Island itself. In December 2010, 48 asylum seekers died just off the coast of the island in what became known as the Christmas Island boat disaster when the boat they were on hit rocks off Flying Fish Cove, and then smashed against nearby cliffs. In the case Plaintiff M61-2010 EV Commonwealth of Australia, the High Court of Australia ruled in a 7-0 joint judgment that asylum seekers detained on Christmas Island were entitled to the protections of the Migration Act. Accordingly, the Commonwealth was obliged to afford asylum seekers a minimum of procedural fairness when assessing the claims. In June 2013, a surge of asylum seekers resulted in the island's 5 detention facilities exceeding the design capacity. Regular operating capacity is 1,094 people, with a contingency capacity of 2,724. After the interception of 4 boats in 6 days, carrying 350 people, the Immigration Department said there were 2,960 irregular maritime arrivals being held. Demographics. As of the 2011 Australian census, the estimated resident population is 2,072. This does not include the highly variable population at the Immigration Detention Centre. The ethnic composition is 65% Chinese, 20% Malay, 10% European and 5% Indian and Eurasian. A 2011 report by the Australian government estimated that religions practiced on Christmas Island include Buddhism 75%, Christianity 12%, Islam 10%, and other 3%. This includes traditional Chinese religions like Taoism and Confucianism, as well as the Baha'i faith. The cuisine of Christmas Island is mostly flown or shipped in. Government. Christmas Island is a non-self-governing territory of Australia, currently administered by the Department of Infrastructure and Regional Development. Administration was carried out by the Attorney General's Department until the 14th of September 2010, and prior to this by the Department of Transport and Regional Services before the 29th of November 2007. The legal system is under the authority of the Governor-General of Australia and Australian law. An administrator appointed by the Governor-General represents the monarch in Australia. The Australian government provides services through the Christmas Island Administration and the Department of Infrastructure and Regional Development, under the Federal Government's Territories Law Reform Act 1992, which came into force on 1 July 1992. Western Australian laws are applied to Christmas Island so far as they are capable of applying in the territory. Non-application or partial application of such laws is at the discretion of the federal government. The Act also gives Western Australian courts judicial power over Christmas Island. Christmas Island remains constitutionally distinct from Western Australia. However, the power of the state to legislate for the territory is delegated by the federal government. The kind of services typically provided by a state government elsewhere in Australia are provided by departments of the Western Australian government, and by contractors, with the costs met by the federal government. A unicameral Shire of Christmas Island with 9 seats provides local government services and is elected by popular vote to serve 4-year terms. Elections are held every 2 years, with 4 or 5 of the members standing for election. Christmas Island residents who are Australian citizens also vote in federal elections. Christmas Island residents are represented in the House of Representatives by the division of Lingiari in the Northern Territory and in the Senate by Northern Territory senators. In early 1986, the Christmas Island Assembly held a design competition for an island flag. The winning design was adopted as the informal flag of the territory for over a decade, and in 2002 it was made the official flag of Christmas Island. Economy. Phosphate mining had been the only significant economic activity, but in December 1987 the Australian government closed the mine. In 1991, the mine was reopened by a consortium which included many of the former mine workers as shareholders. With the support of the government, the $34 million Christmas Island Casino and Resort opened in 1993, but was closed in 1998. As of 2011, the resort has reopened without the casino. The Australian government in 2001 agreed to support the creation of a commercial spaceport on the island. However, this has not yet been constructed, and appears that it will not proceed. The Howard government built a temporary immigration detention centre on the island in 2001 and planned to replace it with a larger, modern facility at Northwest Point until Howard's defeat in the 2007 elections. Culture. The culture of Christmas Island is unique, for people of many different ethnicities inhabit the area. The majority of residents are Chinese, but Europeans and Malays reside there as well, with small Indian and Eurasian communities too. The main languages of Christmas Island are English and Chinese. Dress is usually modest, and tourists should keep a wrap, such as a sarong apario, on hand to cover shorts, bathing suits, and tank tops. It is common to remove shoes when entering a house and to also avoid touching anyone's head. Religious beliefs are diverse, but people are very tolerant of each other's religions. The religions practiced include Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Islam, and Christianity. There is a mosque in Flying Fish Cove, With all of these religions, there are many religious festivals, such as Spring Festival, Hari Raya, Christmas and Easter. Additionally, there is a Baha'i center on the island attractions. Christmas Island is well known for its biological diversity. There are many rare species of animals and plants on the island, making nature walking a popular activity. Along with the diversity of species, many different types of caves exist, such as plateau caves, coastal caves, raised coastal caves and alcoves, sea caves, fissure caves, collapse caves and basalt caves. Most of these are near the sea and have been formed by the action of water. Altogether, there are 42 caves on the island, with Lost Lake Cave, Daniel Roo Cave and Full Frontal Cave being the most well-known. The many freshwater springs include Hosnes Spring Ramsar, which also has a mangrove stand. The Dales is a rainforest in the western part of the island and consists of 7 deep valleys, all of which were formed by spring streams. Hughesdale Waterfall is part of this area and is a popular attraction. The annual breeding migration of the red crabs is a popular event. Fishing is another common activity. There are many distinctive species of fish in the oceans surrounding Christmas Island. Snorkeling and swimming in the ocean are 2 other activities that are extremely popular. Walking trails are also very popular, for there are many beautiful trails surrounded by extravagant flora and fauna. 63% of the island is national park, making it one of the main attractions to experience when visiting. Flora and fauna. Christmas Island was uninhabited until the late 19th century, allowing many species to evolve without human interference. 2/3 of the island has been declared a national park, which is managed by the Australian Department of Environment and Heritage through Parks Australia. Christmas Island has always been known for its unique species both of flora and fauna. Flora. The dense rainforest has grown in the deep soils of the plateau and on the terraces. The forests are dominated by 25 tree species. Ferns, orchids and vines grow on the branches in the humid atmosphere beneath the canopy. The 135 plant species include at least 18 that are found nowhere else. The rainforest is in great condition despite the mining activities over the last 100 years. Areas that have been damaged by mining are now a part of an ongoing rehabilitation project. The island is small and covers 135 square kilometers of land, which 63% of that land has been declared national park. Christmas Island's endemic plants include the trees Arenga listeri, Pandanus elatus and Dendronide peltata var, Mariana, the shrubs Abutilon listeri, Colubrina pedunculata, Gruyere insularis and Pandanus christmatensis, the vines Hoy aldrichi and Zenaria alba, the herbs Acistasia alba, Decliptera maclari and Peperomia rossi, the grass Aschemum nativitatis, the fern Asplenium listeri, and the orchids Brachypes aracathas, Flickengeria nativitatis, Freatia listeri and Zexine exilus. Fauna. 2 species of native rats, the Maclears and bulldog rats, have become extinct since the island was settled. The Javan rooster is an introduced species here. The endemic Christmas Island shrew has not been seen since the mid-1980s and may be already extinct, while the Christmas Island pipistrelle is critically endangered and possibly also extinct. The land crabs and seabirds are the most noticeable fauna on the island. Christmas Island has been identified by BirdLife International as both an endemic bird area and an important bird area because it supports 5 endemic species and 5 subspecies as well as over 1% of the world populations of 5 other seabirds. 20 terrestrial and intertidal species of crab have been described here, of which 13 are regarded as true land crabs, being only dependent on the ocean for larval development. Robber crabs, known elsewhere as coconut crabs, also exist in large numbers on the island. The annual red crab mass migration to the sea to spawn has been called one of the wonders of the natural world. This takes place each year around November, after the start of the wet season and in synchronization with the cycle of the moon. Once at the ocean, the mothers release the embryos where they can survive and grow until they are able to live on land. The island is a focal point for seabirds of various species. 8 species or subspecies of seabirds nest on it. The most numerous is the red-footed booby, which nests in colonies, using trees on many parts of the shore terrace. The widespread brown booby nests on the ground near the edge of the sea cliff and inland cliffs. Abbott's booby nests on tall emergent trees of the western, northern and southern plateau rainforest, the only remaining nesting habitat for this bird in the world. Another endangered and endemic bird, the Christmas frigatebird, has nesting areas on the northeastern shore terraces. The more widespread great frigatebirds nest in semi-deciduous trees on the shore terrace, with the greatest concentrations being in the northwest and south point areas. The common noddy and 2 species of bosun are tropic birds, with the brilliant gold or silver plumage and distinctive streamer tail feathers, also nest on the island. Of the 10 native land birds and shorebirds, 7 are endemic species or subspecies. This includes the Christmas thrush and the Christmas imperial pigeon. Some 86 migrant bird species have been recorded as visitors to the island. 6 species of butterfly are known to occur on Christmas Island. These are the Christmas swallowtail, striped albatross, Christmas emperor, king cerulean, lesser grass blue, and Papuan grass yellow.